My first and perhaps the most important message to you is that the pension continues to be valuable and sustainable. We trustees take a long-term view of the plan to make sure it benefits today's retirees, as well as being available for the members for the future years. When we talk about the long term, we're not just looking at 3 or 5 years ahead, but often decades into the future. That is our responsibility to our members, regardless of age. Next, we're going to meet our Board of Trustees. As you know, the pension plan is jointly trusted. That is, that the employer and the members share the risks and responsibilities. On the screen, you see the organizations that appoint the trustees. Many of us are here today. We're all wearing name tags. Oh, here's my name tag. We're all wearing name tags, so feel free to chat with us after the AGM. I ask the trustees here to stand when I call your name so that those who are in attendance can see who you are. We'll start with the trustees appointed by the Government of BC. Lucas Corwin. Lucas, are you here? No. Angie Sorrell. Philip Twyford. Hilary Woodward. The trustees appointed by the Union of BC Municipalities are Wayne Baldwin, Gary McIsaac, Al Richmond, and Richard Taylor. Both Wayne and Richard are retired plan members. Lynn Coker, Donna Lomer, Tony Collins, and John Johnson are appointed by the Health Employers Association of BC. I, myself, and Ron Amos are appointed by the British Columbia Public School Employers Association. Trustees appointed by the Province of British Columbia and the Union of BC Municipalities are Diana Loken and Mary Proctor. Chris Finding and Jim Calvin are appointed by the Hospital Employees Union. Patty Price and Trevor Davies are appointed by the BC Division of the Canadian Union of Public Employees. The trustees appointed by the Council of Joint Organizations and Unions are Brian Schramm and Brian Northam. Dennis Blanchford, and Joseph Ryder are appointed by the Health Sciences Association of British Columbia. We have Deb Ducharme and Lauren Burkhart, who are appointed by the British Columbia Nurses Union. And the trustees appointed by the British Columbia Professional Firefighters Association and British Columbia British Columbia Police Association are Robert Weeks and Tom Stamatakis. Denisa Bernardo and Gary Yee, our Vice Chair, are appointed by the Municipal Employees Pension Committee. We're getting through it. And finally, Bonnie Pearson and Don Sutton are retired plan members appointed by the Municipal Employees Pension Committee. We would also like to thank the trustees who served in 2017. They have completed their terms. We want to thank Gail Dutay, Kelly Knox, Barb Sinclair, and Todd Sweet. As well, we have representation from our service providers here. Representing the BC Pension Corporation is Aaron Walker-Duncan, Vice President of Board Services. The Pension Corporation provides administration services on behalf of the Municipal Pension Plan. It provides services to members and employers and handles the plan administration work, which includes paying pensions to retired members and beneficiaries that equate to more than $5 million per day just for MPP. Visit their booth in the lobby if you have any pension questions. British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, or BCI, invests the plan assets. The Board of Trustees provides investment direction, and BCI handles the day-to-day activity involved in managing those investments. Representing BCI today is Robert Field, Acting Senior Vice President, Corporate and Investor Relations. Sean Hatch is with us today. From Hatch Law, he provides our legal advice to the Board of Trustees. Eckler Limited performs actuarial valuations on the plan. Our plan actuary is Richard Border. Pacific Blue Cross administers extended health care and dental coverage plans available to our retired plan members. John Crawford, CEO, is here representing PBC. I also invite you to visit the PBC's booth in the lobby as well. Aon Hewitt is the plan's independent investment advisor, and KPMG is the plan's external auditor. ZLC and Cubic Health are the plan's benefit advisors. Representing ZLC today is John McGrath, lead employee benefits advisor. So here's our agenda for this morning's meeting. Up next, we will ask Vice Chair Gary Yee to provide an overview of the plan's financial highlights for the past year. Following that, Deb Ducharme, a longtime member and past chair of the Benefits Committee, will provide an update on the board's review of the post-retirement group benefits program. Following that, I will be back with a brief look of what is ahead for the plan. The day will then conclude with question and answers. Microphones are set up in each aisle. As well, we will have mic runners available to ask if you'd like to ask the question from your seat. Or as mentioned previously, you can fill out the green form and that will be brought forward to us. To make sure everyone gets to ask a question during the question and answer session, we'll follow the same rules as last year. We ask that you only ask one question per turn. Once everybody has had their chance to ask the one question, those who have additional questions come back to the mics for a second time. Obviously, after the second time, we'll go to a third time, etc. We have left lots of time for questions, so I don't anticipate any problems with that. It's now my pleasure to introduce Gary Yee. Gary has been a national representative for the Canadian Union of Public Employees, or Kewpie, since 1997, and has the role of pension and airline coordinator in British Columbia. In his role as pension coordinator, Gary takes the lead on pension issues in British Columbia. He has worked with defined benefit, defined contribution, and hybrid pension plans. He is a staff advisor to QPBC Pension Committee, a representative on the Municipal Employees Pension Committee, and chair of the Municipal Employees Pension Advisory Committee. Please welcome Gary.
Okay, thanks, Hilary. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to look at the most recent financial highlights. We'll also talk a little bit about the latest membership trends and how they affect the plan. It's important to remember the board's first pension security goal is guaranteeing basic pensions. This is the commitment the municipal pension plan makes to every member who has made a contribution to the plan. Once a month, pensions are paid to retirees, or depending on the option they choose at retirement, their beneficiaries. In 2017, the plan paid out about $2 billion in pensions, benefits, and expenses. That's why it's so important we trustees take a long-term view of the plan's sustainability. We are very pleased to report that the plan does indeed remain healthy. It's fully funded on the basis that current contributions continue. The last valuation, as at December 31st, 2015, indicated that contribution rates did not need to change and showed a funding ratio over 100%. It's worth refreshing ourselves about how the plan's pensions work. Throughout what we can call the pension life cycle, the board strives to maintain the health of the plan by monitoring all aspects. The starting point in the life cycle is that you and your employer contribute to the plan with every paycheck. These contributions are pooled and invested. The investments become a significant part of your pension. About 75% of all the pension you receive at retirement comes from investment returns. We'll talk a little later about the importance of investment growth. When you're ready to retire, you start receiving your pension. So this completes the pension life cycle, from your first contributions to your lifetime pension. Now here's a brief look at how the plan pays those basic lifetime pensions. Every month, contributions flow into the basic account. As I said, these contributions are pooled together and invested. The Board of Trustees provide directions to BCI, and they manage the plan's investment portfolio. Investment returns then flow back into the basic account. Pension payments are then made from that account. So with that in mind, let's look at how the pension has performed. The Board of Trustees' investment policies is documented in the Statement of Investment Policies and Procedure, or SIP. The SIP sets investment guidelines and directions for BCI. BCI manages the investments, and we, the Board, measures progress in two ways. Our first measure is how have our investment performed compared to market benchmarks. For 2017, you'll see our investment returns was 11%, and that beat the benchmark of 9.9%. But we also take a longer view. As we said, if we look at the plan's performance over the last 5 years, we're still in positive territory. The 5 years annualized return is 10.4%, again beating the benchmark of 9.2%. These long-term results are important. We're attentive to paying pensions today for retired members, but it's also our job to make sure the plan can pay pensions for all members, including those who are just joining. Now we'll look at our second measure. Our second measure is, have we met our investment return target? You might think of the investment return target as the baseline for BCI. That investment return target is 6.5%. While our annual investment return may vary, this is a figure we measure our return against over the long term. As we look over the last 10 years, you can see that the investment return is 7.1%, so it remains above our target. At the start of 2017, the plan had $46.4 billion. At the end of the year, the plan assets has grown to $51.5 billion. We've collected about $2 billion from contributions and gained $5.1 billion from investment returns. We've paid out about $2 billion in pensions, benefits, and expenses. About the same amount that came in through contributions went out in pensions payments, benefits, and expenses. However, the plan grew through investment returns. That's why I said earlier that investment income makes such a big difference to our pensions. About 25% of every pension dollar comes from contributions. About 75% come from investment returns. It's investment returns that really make the basic account grow. And that's the kind of growth is possible because of pooled investments. The plan now has a big fund to invest, over $50 billion. But it's not just our fund. Funds are pooled with other public sector pension fund funds and other investors' funds. These create efficiencies. Because we all invest our funds through BCI, we benefit from lower fees. The plan's investment costs are just over 1/3 of 1%. By comparison, you would likely pay fees of 2 or 3% if you invested directly in mutual funds. There are other advantages as well. BCI has investment opportunities available to large funds that aren't open to individual investors. Because of the long-term view we've been talking about, the plan can make investments over a longer time frame. We also don't have to worry about cashing in investments during market downturns. It's not that the downturns affect us, but we can afford to sell when it's more beneficial to do so. Finally, the planned investments are well diversified to cushion against lower returns in any one asset category. In other words, we don't put all our eggs in one basket. The plan's long-term asset mix policy continues to increasingly shift towards real assets such as land, building, regulated utilities, and renewable resources. These assets are mostly tangible, physical investments in private markets suited for the long-term financial objectives of the pension plan. They typically provide reliable cash flows, grow in value, and protect against inflation, while avoiding the short-term volatilities of public markets. This year, we completed an asset liability study, and we will set an implementation schedule in the coming months. The board believes in responsible investing. As you may know, we are part of the Principle of Responsible Investments, also known as PRI, which keeps an eye on how environmental, social, and governance, or ESG issues, affect investments. We participated in Climate Action 100+ and asked BCI to sign on. Its purpose is to enable large institutional investors to collaborate on engagement with the world's largest corporate greenhouse gas emitters. The goal is to improve governance on climate change, curb emissions, and strengthen climate-related financial disclosure. The plan is among nearly 300 investors that have supported it. Together, we have nearly $30 trillion in assets under management. In the past year, the board collaborated with BCI on a climate action plan to understand the implication of climate change on our investments. Climate change is becoming more and more important for pension boards like ours to consider. As trustees, our primary mandate is to grow and protect our members' funds. Because our warming planet creates a number of risks and opportunities, it's very important to have a plan in place. BCI released its Climate Action Plan on September 7th. This plan addresses our specific requests to BCI for a comprehensive understanding of our plan's exposure to climate change risk and opportunities, and we are proud of the results. Since the mid-2000s, BCI has been interacting with companies and advocating for reforms to address climate-related issues on behalf of the board. The Climate Action Plan is an extension of that work and was created through partnership with BCI and the board. It aligns with both our objectives and industry's best standards. The board continues to work with BCI on doing our own plan in-depth analysis and disclosure. Now we'll look at who makes up the municipal pension plan. In 2017, there were more than 330,000 members. Of these members, 59% are active, those that are working and contributing to the plan. 29% are retired, those that are receiving a pension. And 12% are inactive, those that are no longer working for a plan employer but have left their contributions in the plan. Here we see the age group within the active membership. 33% of active members are under the age of 40. Another significant group, 27%, is between the age of 40 and 50. The remaining group in the pie chart, those aged 50 and over, make up a significant portion of the membership. In fact, 40% of active members are now more than 50 years old. This reflects the slow maturing of the pension plan membership, which we'll illustrate in the next slide. Here's another way to look at the current membership in the plan. There are increasingly fewer active members paying contributions and larger numbers of retired members receiving pensions. Last year, active membership grew just 2.3%, compared to 6.4% growth of retired members. The ratio of active to retired members is 2.1 active members for every one retired member. Since 2008, our active membership has grown 25%, but our retired membership has grown 67%, which is more than double the growth of new members coming into the plan. We have talked about a long-term view of investments and planning. We need to keep demographic shifts like these in mind. Next year, the Municipal Pension Plan will mark 80 years of service to its members. For it to meet the needs of those working and contributing towards their retirement 10, 20, 30, or even 80 years from now, the plan has to keep adjusting to growing number of members receiving pensions, adjusting to global market changes and uncertainty, and protecting the sustainability of the plan for all members. The plan's more than 330,000 members are incredibly diverse. Some have just started to build their pensions, while others have been collecting their pensions for decades. As trustees, we must govern to the best interests of all plan members, with all plan members in mind, as the plan moves into the future. Good governance and far-sighted financial management has helped the plan become a model of sustainability. We are proud of our plan, and we trust you are too. Thank you. Turn it back to Hilary now.
Thank you, Gary. We're really happy to have good financial news to share. Next, I'm happy to introduce Debra Ducharme for the Post-Retirement Group Benefits Review presentation. Deb is a registered nurse and a longtime activist with the British Columbia Nurses Union, BCNU. She served in the BCNU Provincial Council from 2003 until her retirement this year in 2018. Deb joined the Board of Trustees in 2010 and has served on the Benefits Committee, including a term as Chair, and the Communications and Advocacy Committee. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, Hilary. I'm happy to be here to give you an overview of the Board's review of the Retirement Group Benefits Program. As a reminder, providing access to the group benefits is one of the Board's top 3 priority pension security goals. The plan subsidizes extended healthcare and medical services plan, the MSP premiums, based on years of service. An unsubsidized dental program is also available. Whether the premium is subsidized or not, group benefits available through the plan are often more affordable than programs available to individuals. As we learned in the previous presentation, your basic pension is funded by contributions you and your employer make while you're working. These contributions are pooled in what we call the basic account, and the plan invests the assets. About 75% of your pension comes from investments. As shown on the slide, the funding for group healthcare coverage is different. The plan takes a part of the current employer contributions to fund group benefit subsidies for today's retired members. This small portion of employer contributions is used 2 ways. One part goes to the Inflation Adjustment Account, the IAA, from which cost of living, or COLA, are paid. The other part subsidizes group benefits for current retirees. These benefits are not guaranteed, and they're subject to the funding limits. Why are we reviewing the Post-Retirement Group Benefit Program? We know how important they are to retired members. Many of you participate in the extended health and dental plans, and that's why we regularly review the program. First, The Retirement Group Benefit Program is regularly reviewed as part of our good governance model to determine its cost sustainability, service experience, and member value. Second, when the board made the last changes to the post-retirement group benefits program effective January 1st of 17, we made a promise to review the new dental program after 2 years of experience. A thorough review of the group benefits program has at its center technical aspects. In other words, we need data about how the program is performing. To help us collect and understand this data, the board hired ZLC Financial and Cubic Health as our professional health benefit advisors. ZLC is an independent firm with deep experience in the group benefits field. It is coordinating the technical data collection and analysis. ZLC is working with Cubic to gather and understand claims data so the board has a clear picture on how the program is working. Member experience will show us a second prospectus. Engaging with you, our members, is an important part of the review. We want to hear about members' experience with the program, including members like Jean, who you see on the slide. We're planning for that engagement. As a start, we worked with the research firm Ipso to assist with pre-consultation. A random but representative group of members were invited to participate in an online bulletin board to answer some questions about group benefits. Those responses will help us develop the best questions and collection tools to use for the next phase. Be assured we're still in the planning phase. We will be reaching out widely to collect input. In our process, the board has reaffirmed its commitment and pride in continuing to provide plan members access to extended health and dental benefits. Next, we'll look at how we're reviewing each of the program elements you see on the screen. The program's effectiveness, the carrier standards and practices, and your experience with the program. This is what's included in our expert consultation. We're analyzing claims data from 2016 and 2017 and from 2018 as it becomes available in order to get a clear picture of how members are using the program. In the analysis, no personal individual data is shared. It is all composite data that we're looking at. This has already made some difference to you, the retired members, that are participating in the dental program. As part of the early review, the board saw that the actual cost of the dental programs were lower than anticipated. We worked with Pacific Blue Cross to find solutions. As a result, your premium rate was reduced beginning August 1st. Rates will be reevaluated this year and may be adjusted again in February. Now back to the slides. We're evaluating the group benefits program costs and risks. For example, the major risk facing the plan is driven by prescription drugs. Finally, we're studying trends. We're studying member use of the program. This will include benchmarking the program's use and costs against national and BC benchmarks, including use of generic and specialty drugs. This helps us better understand what your needs are and how future plan design can best support those needs. With our professional consultants, we're doing this by first reviewing how claims have been adjudicated. That's for every individual claim. Identifying any gaps we discover and working with Pacific Blue Cross to implement the needed changes. Next, we'll be looking at service and standards, including asking members about the quality of service they're receiving. We'll also be benchmarking the carrier against other carriers in the industry, along with reviewing how the carrier is meeting the service standards in our contract. In addition to analyzing the claims data, ZLC will be looking at how members are using the extended healthcare and dental plans. ZLC has already been providing the board with background on emerging drug trends and how those trends and public drug plans like pharmacare affect the plan's extended healthcare program. Why is this useful? Staying informed on drug trends helps us keep an eye on the future in an industry that's evolving rapidly so that we can keep the program sustainable. We'll also be asking active and retired members what's important to you. We will be asking members to share your experience with the program, including your experience with Pacific Blue Cross. In addition to this, we regularly receive member input requests and improvements to the program. So what's the timeline for all this? Well, this year, as I've described, the professional health benefit consultation is underway. We are also planning for your input. We've already done some of the pre-consultation with members to help shape the fuller engagement. Next year, this is when the members really get involved. So we will be creating opportunities to gather member input, and we'll report on member input at next year's AGM. In 2020, after all the pieces are in place, we'll report on the results on the website and in the winter issue of Pension Life. How can you participate? All along the way, please stay informed. We'll provide updates in the Pension Life newsletter and also on the website whenever there's news to share. In particular, watch for opportunities to provide your input. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be happy to take questions on this during the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. We really appreciate that update. I'd like to close today close our reports today with a brief view of what's ahead for the municipal pension plan. All of the board's actions are actually focused on making sure the plan is healthy and sustainable. How are we going to do that in the coming years? We've talked a lot in the past meetings about the board's pension security goals to provide members with a basic lifetime pension, sustainable cost of living or COLA, and access to group benefits. But the board actually has 10 goals that it tracks and updates over a 10-year period. They cover things like administrative effectiveness, member education, and investment returns. One of the goals is continuing improvement on board competencies. Being a trustee means having a duty of loyalty to you, those who place your trust in us. We're charged with enacting good governance to ensure the plan is managed in the best interests of all members and beneficiaries. To fulfill what we call our fiduciary duty, trustees need expertise, they need training, and they need support. So how do we know if we're practicing good governance? We've established some performance measures to monitor our governance as well as the performance of our service providers. We recently completed an asset liability study. Our recent study has helped us to decide how to adjust our allocations for the long-term health and sustainability of our plan in the midst of a very turbulent global market. Since 2012, we've continued to move toward the real assets and reduce exposure to stocks and bonds. And of course, this year there is the group benefits review, for which you've just had an update. This year, more improvements are also planned for the website. Online retirement is now faster, meaning members applying for their pension will receive their estimates faster. We will continue to roll out other enhancements as we learn more about how members use the website. If you're retired, you may have noticed changes to My Account. You can see up on the far, that would be your right, my left, far right, you can see the little button My Account up at the top there. When you click onto that My Account, the screen you will see will give you a sign-in, which makes it easier to find your latest information, such as your pension statement and tax slips. From this screen, you can also change things like your address, as well as review and update any of your beneficiary information. And of course, we always welcome feedback on the website and how we can improve it for your use. The plan's next actuarial valuation will be as at the end of this year, 2018. The board will get a report next summer, and then we will announce the valuation findings next fall. As we mentioned in the financial highlights presentation, the actual actuarial valuation is a very important tool to measure the plan's health and sustainability. Now we'll begin the question and answer session. We will get to as many questions as we can, and I will remind you to just ask one question at a time. And we also ask that you please try and limit your question to 1 minute so that we can get through. On stage with me are Vice Chair Gary Yee, Benefits Committee Member Debra Ducharme, Executive Director Judy Payne is just joining us up at the table. Our service providers are also here to answer questions as needed, so there's quite a few of us here to answer the questions. We're taking a slightly different approach this year. In past years, the chair has stood up here and taken the questions, but I'm actually going to join the people on the table so that we can have this as more of a conversation and able to answer your questions as best we can. So I look forward to your questions. We'll start with that mic, then that mic, and then anybody who's not wanting to come to a mic and wants somebody to hand them a microphone, just put up your hand, or if you've written a question on a card, those questions will come up to me. Thank you. Hi there.
Hello.
Can you just state your name?
Tracy Dolan. I'm from Kewpie Local 703 in Maple Ridge Pitt Meadow Schools. Other pension plans like Public Service have made significant improvements to the accrual rate. And for example, they've removed the bridge benefit because so few members were taking it. And I'm just wondering why the municipal pension plan hasn't considered it or done the same. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Is this mic working? Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. That's a great question, and we appreciate that. And we are very aware of the plan's other changes. The board is working with the plan partners. The plan partners are the ones that make those kind of changes and decisions. And we are working with them, and of course, our main goal is to make sure it's sustainable and healthy. Judy, did you want to make any other comments? Or?
I don't have a lot to add. I think there are a number of issues that we're researching and investigating, and I think as soon as the board has made decisions with the plan partners, those will be shared.
Okay, thank you, Judy.
I'm a new retiree.
Congratulations.
From the City of Burnaby. Oh, I don't deserve applause for that. My name is Mary Gleason. I have a question for the Blue Cross rep, and it has to do with some of the things that we... I have a question for the Blue Cross rep,
okay.
And it has to do with some of the things that are currently not covered according to the pharmacies, things that we might be getting at this age, some of us. I'm thinking specifically about... shingles vaccines, hepatitis vaccines, and possibly one of the pneumonia vaccines. Is Blue Cross considering covering them? They're rather expensive. There's a series of shots. Or are you talking to them about that? We're talking $200, $300 plus.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Monique Klein has just joined us, is a client service rep with Pacific Blue Cross, and she's probably best positioned to take the question.
Okay, so hi there. Thank you very much for your question. Can you hear me now?
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Just like that. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. So currently vaccines are not, such as those ones you've mentioned, are not covered under the plan. It is possible, I think the the trustees have made certain decisions to take a look at the benefits review, and they may come up at that time. As a standard, though, across the board, Pacific Blue Cross does cover some vaccines. Not all vaccines are covered, and those would be some of them that aren't included. So I think this would be probably a very good thing to include in the benefits review, to review and see if that's something that the plan would like to add going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Do I have somebody that doesn't want to come to the mic? No. Okay, so we'll take your question, this woman in this lovely pink vest.
I dare the drivers out there to knock me over. I'd like to start with saying thanks very much for hearing our request for more Q&A time. I think we're getting the Q&A started really early, so look out.
Okay. Can I just ask you to give your name, please?
Oh, I'm
Thanks.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Penny Oyama, District 2, Burnaby of the MPRA. Yay, Burnaby. I have a question for Deb Ducharme. So you've described the humongous review process that is currently taking place. I want to know why such a humongous process was not done before the CHOP to the dental benefits and the extended benefits, please.
There actually was, sorry, I'm going to move this closer. There actually was a significant process done before the last review that included a lot of analysis. What wasn't done was a direct outreach to a large group of the membership, because what the data showed us was we were going to have to make very significant changes and in fact some cuts. And all of the information and the requests and things that we had come in had been for improvements, and any improvement is a cost increase. And the data showed that we were on a track to have to make significant cuts. So there had been a decision made at that time that we would not do member outreach. We recognized that we could have had some improved communication, and we're striving really hard this time to improve that outreach and allow for member communication. But we actually did a very deep analysis and review before the last review as well.
Is there time for back and forth discussion? I would like to.
As I said in my presentation, we really are working hard to provide opportunity for member input. If you remember, it was that we were going to have 2 years of data analysis. And so the actual 2 years of data doesn't complete until the end of this year. But we're already starting work on it. And we are planning to do significant outreach to members. Yeah.
I would just like to remind you that as a new retiree, you will now realize that time lapses like that make a huge difference in how we're able to live on our sweet little old pensions.
Oh, absolutely. As a new retiree, I really appreciate the limit.
Waiting 2 years for...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question. Could I get the question from this gentleman here?
Yeah, Brian McConville, member of MPRA, retired trustee. I have a similar issue in the fact that this study is taking way too long. I'm pretty disappointed that we're now going to come back next year and hear a report from the input from the members. Then we wait another year for that to be analysed and get a report back of what's going to happen to benefits. Meantime, as the previous speaker said, 2 or 3 years when you're retired, it means a lot. My other question is, well, that was a statement, actually. My other question is that, are there any permanent staff working on this study, or just the committee members from the board who are on the benefits committee? Do you have permanent people working on this on a regular basis?
So the answer to that question is we've hired ZLC, which is our professional consultant, and they are working on this very hard for us and putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into it. Our staff is also working on it. I mean, the benefits committee obviously meets 3 or 4 times a year, and therefore there has to be a lot of work going on in the background at the same time. So the staff is definitely dedicated to working on this as well, yes. So.
Well, while I'm here and you're consulting with the people who use the plan, and most of them are here, I don't know how you're going to contact all the retirees and ask them for their input on how their benefits are used. But one of my suggestions is that the IAA plan is in pretty good shape. Have you considered putting more of the employer contribution into benefits and somehow or other capping the amount going to the IAA, which is in very good shape and is in pretty good shape for the next 35 years? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Could I have...
Leslie Franklin, Kewpie Local 703. I have a question on benefits too, and it's how will the elimination of the MSP premium affect the cost of our benefits in the future? When that's removed, what will happen to the subsidies and how will that be affected? Are the costs going to go up? Are they going to go down?
Okay, so currently the subsidy is not a guaranteed benefit. And right now, the trustees have not had a full discussion on what will happen with those, the MSP premiums. But right now, they go into the regular account to help pay for our number one priority of paying pensions, and will go into that regular account. And again, I emphasize it's not a guaranteed benefit.
I'll just add to that.
Sure, Deb, do you want
to? The funding that's used to subsidize the MSP is not part of the funding that we referred to in the diversion, the employer contribution percentage that is used for benefit subsidy.
Deb, just
sorry,
into your
that's
mic.
used for benefit subsidy. So as that subsidy is reduced, it was reduced once and it might be reduced again or eliminated entirely, there's a savings to both the plan and to the retired members because they're paying less for their portion of the subsidy. And the money right now would just go into the basic account. But as Hilary has identified, there hasn't been a real thorough discussion about that, and there's, with regard to the plan partner or the board at this time.
Thank you for the question.
Ed Pecos, MPRA Vice President and former trustee. My question is directed, I guess, at Blue Cross or perhaps the board. I've had a member come to me and request that in light of the fact that the rates went down August the 1st for dental, this particular member said she could not afford it at the time when the subsidies were taken away, and then they went and lowered the rates by $12 a month or something. So she asked if, in light of the fact that she got out, can she get back in now? Because the rates were lowered and now maybe she could afford it. So there might be other retirees that did exactly the same thing, but under Pacific Blue Cross rules, once you get out, you can't get back in because you have to show sustained coverage through another carrier or whatever. So I'm just throwing that at the Board of Trustees to think about and consider if members actually pulled out of the Blue Cross because of the expense, and now after the review, the rates have been lowered, can they buy back in without penalty?
Okay. Monique, would you like to make a comment? Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very good question. So we did discuss that at the time, and the decision was to allow members to come back into the plan if it was only because of the financial reason, essentially, if that caused hardship and now that person could afford to come into the plan, they could join the plan, but they had to have their coverage backdated and premium backdated and coverage backdated as well to the start of the plan. So that was January 1, 2017. So that was the decision that was made, and so it would enable people to come into the plan if they wanted to do so, but thought that the, let's say, additional, I'm sorry, I don't know what the numbers exactly, but if it was $12, that was too expensive and now it became affordable, they could do that. And that was just for those cases. It wasn't opening it to the rest of everyone who had declined it initially. It was just for that particular case.
So they would have to specify that they withdrew their membership in Blue Cross Dental because of the costs incurred.
Yes, as of January 1st, 2017, yeah.
But they'd have to backdate their payments and
That's
premiums?
correct.
They have to pay up?
That's correct.
Irrespective of the fact they had any dental work or anything?
And the coverage would have been provided if they had the dental work during that time. They would have had that covered under the plan as well. We would have done that on exception.
Yeah, see, that I don't think that was ever communicated to anybody that pulled out.
See, the trouble is that it was only a 6-month period. So from January till July, there were the specific rates that were provided, and then in August they went down. And so it was relatively minor because for half of the year, or the majority of the year, half of the year, they would have been having the higher rates, and then for the next half, it would have been lower. So overall, it was relatively minor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Diane Boniface, and
Good
I've
morning.
been retired almost for 4 years from the Royal Columbian Hospital. My question is, have you heard of any information from the federal government for a national pharmacy program? And I also understand from friends who have lived in Ontario and have family in Ontario that they have full coverage of their drugs there. It seems that BC is always lagging behind when it comes to pharmacy drugs. Looking after its aged population.
Judy, do you want to take that?
I was actually going to call on Monique again. I think Pacific Blue Cross has been involved a little bit in some of the conversation around a national pharmacare program, and they're probably well positioned to comment on interprovincial differences as well.
So I was just going to comment to British Columbia and the coverage that we have here. And we really do need to be very fortunate. We are very fortunate, and we need to be thankful that we have such great coverage in British Columbia on the public side for sure, with pharmacare and with all of the different agencies that we have that provide coverage for British Columbians. In the past, and that's why the national pharmacare subject has come up. Members have, or people have been coming to British Columbia in order to get their cancer treatments and such, because the majority of treatments are covered, or more treatments are covered than, for example, back east. So we actually are in quite a good space at the moment. And as for national pharmacare, you know, we don't know where that is leading right at the moment. I think we'll have more information in the future on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Eric Jaworski, Kewpie 728, Surrey Schools. Brother Gary, thank you very much for making me a billionaire. If you could just do something about the 330,000 people I have to share it with. I really appreciate it. My question is a little bit broader. We should all congratulate ourselves on the 10th anniversary of the biggest collapse in the stock market that we've seen since the bad days of depression. Most of us don't remember the bad depression of the 20s. But in the last 10 years, what happened, the corporate actually did a pretty good job. They cleaned up their balance sheet pretty good, and they are in a relatively good shape. However, the governments, almost across the board, whether they developed countries or the Democratic Republic of Congo, they just borrowing money like crazy. So they all were happy with the first part of Mr. Keynes' theory, borrowing the bad times, but they totally forgot about the second part, pay back when the times are good. And the same applies to consumers. Most people now have more debt than they had 10 years ago. And the less developed the country is, the more debt there seems to be for the consumer and the government. Well, you don't have to be a great economist to see that if the interest rates ever go up, and they have done just that in the last month, they moved up dramatically, people are gonna, and governments are gonna start having problems. Can the corporate do well without the government and the consumer doing well? Thank you.
I'm actually going to ask Rob from BCI, who does our investments, to address that question. Thank you.
It's a very good point and question that's been raised, and specifically the reference to sort of the 10-year anniversary of the global financial crisis is most relevant, especially recognizing that 10 years ago at this very time, we were facing, as investors and savers, really, that's really what a pension plan is about, the second worst market downturn in history. So the good news is that we have come out of that event, and absolutely we've had some strong returns. But going forward, the challenge for us all is to make sure that governments are in a position to sort of repay that debt, and that we can continue to generate from a plan perspective, a pension plan perspective, generate the return that's required. So we've been very clear with the board, Municipal Pension Board, and our other clients about expected returns going forward aren't going to be as rosy as they've been in the last 10 years. So we've got to position our strategy and the Municipal Pension Board strategy to sort of really continue to achieve the return that you need. So what we're seeing in markets today is it's a good thing, actually, that interest rates are going higher. It's got to be in a measured pace, though. And we had some experience about this particular phenomena in 2008. It was called the taper tantrum, where the U.S. Federal Reserve had started to increase the interest rates, and the market reacted to it. But bottom line is there's been a lot of fiscal stimulus and financial stimulus that needs to be sort of taken out of the market, and the ball has got to be passed back to the corporations, the point that you made, and then also to consumers, and less reliance on government. And I think that will, we need to keep an eye on policymakers to make sure that they're going to manage that transition successfully.
Thank you, Rob. That's why we have Rob here to answer that question. I'm going to actually ask this gentleman, because I know you've had a question already, so we'll...
Yeah, Bill Bryant from District 31 MPRA. It's on dental, and I've heard a few questions on it already, and I've learned a little bit more here than I've heard in the past. I just wonder, in percentage-wise, how many retirees dropped their dental coverage following the removal of the subsidy?
Monique, do you have that number here?
I think we'd have to take. I think we'd have to take it on notice, and we can post the Q&A on the website after the AGM.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think a lot of people made that decision based on the evidence we had at that time. I certainly did, and I've had nothing but trouble with my teeth since, of course. But I'd be very interested in your answer. Thank you.
Okay, we will most certainly follow up with that and put it on the website. Thank you for the question.
Okay, Leslie Franklin, President, Kewpie 703. I have a question, and I believe this has already occurred in some pension plans, or some are certainly looking at it. Will the plan look at eliminating the YMPE so that the lower wage earners will no longer have to subsidize the earners who are above the MPP and subsidizing their pension? And that's something that has been brought up in the past, and just wondering if that's going to be looked at with this plan.
Okay, thank you for the question. Judy, do you want to address that?
Sure. So the question is really about the fact that the plan is integrated with Canada Pension Plan. So there's a cross-reference to the YMPE in both the contribution rates as well as in the accruals. Oh, YMPE, sorry. YMPE stands for Years Maximum Pensionable Earnings, and it's the salary that you contribute on to Canada Pension Plan. So when Canada Pension Plan was introduced in 1966, the municipal plan design was integrated with CPP so that your aggregate benefits remained essentially the same and your aggregate contributions remained essentially the same at that time. So a lot has changed in 50 years. Canada Pension Plan has expanded, and that's going to take 40 years to implement. The board is aware of the issues that are around the integration with the YMPE and with the changes to CPP, and that is one of those things that we're talking about with the plan partners. So we're still in the research and analysis stage. There's no decision made at this point.
Could I have the question from, were you there? Okay, sorry. Doesn't matter. We've got time for both, so go ahead. Either one.
Been here. Penny Oyama from Burnaby. I'd like to ask Gary, please, if he could review that little tidbit that you said about how our funds are invested with respect to environmental concerns and climate change and all that, because I think I heard the words sounding something like investments are made in emissions producers, and a whole bunch of radars went off in my head.
How about, while Gary's looking that up, we
Okay.
move to the next question, and then he can get back to your answer so that we're making sure we're following the exact. Apparently Gary's got it now. So, sorry.
So what we were talking about was the Climate Action 100 plan that we signed on to, and that we've also asked BCI to sign on to. And the purpose of that was to enable large institutional investors like ourselves to collaborate on engagement with the world's largest corporate greenhouse gas emitters, right? And the goal there is to improve governance on climate change, curb emissions, and strengthen climate-related financial disclosure. That's
So that is what you said.
Yes.
I just wonder about the collusion with emitters. What is this?
Yeah. Maybe I could ask Rob if you want to speak on that climate action plan.
When we think of climate change, without question, it is the number one environmental risk that's facing the globe, all of us. It's a complex issue to resolve and to get agreement on how to resolve it. And I would say that there are three key kind of players, broad players, that need to be part of the solution. So policymakers, government, the UN, right? Setting the tone and expectations in the law for all of us. Then there are companies and investors. That's sort of what we were talking about in your question. And then the third category that is here in the room, consumers. Yep. And so at the end of the day, there's groups, obviously companies are emitters, but consumers are part of the challenge as well. What we're trying to do as an investor, and taking a step back, we've got your retirement savings invested across the economy, and yes, it does include energy companies. And so now the question is, and that's from an investment strategy perspective and also fiduciary duty, when you think of the Canadian equity market in particular, 20% of our index is actually in energy. And it is a big component of the Canadian economy. Not to say that we should just blindly ignore climate change, but what we're doing as investors is actually looking at and expecting companies to be managing their carbon footprint and also being mindful of the emissions that they're producing for the benefit of addressing climate change overall. So that's kind of the broad approach across a number of institutional investors, and sort of requiring companies to disclose and then advise on their strategy going forward to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions where they can. So that's the broad policy approach on climate change.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Ed Pecos, MPRA. This is regarding COLA, cost of living adjustments. Next Friday, probably they'll release the cost of living September 30th, which is our COLA going forward in January of next year. 3%, I believe it was in July. It was 2.8% in August, and it's probably going to be close to that now. Our COLA is capped at 2.1% going forward, I believe. And if that's the case, is there any provision in there that the board could go above that cap if cost of living September 30th is 2.8, 2.9? Or were we stuck with that 2.1?
So for those of you who are not familiar what happened, we set a COLA cap. When the valuation results come out, we set a COLA cap, and that cap was set at 2.1%. So in other words, the cost of living adjustment cannot go above 2.1%. That's the policy that we set. And the reason why it was done was in order to provide a sustainable and long-term COLA. Because if we didn't do that, then there would be a very strong case or possibility that in future years there would be absolutely no COLA adjustment whatsoever. So as it stands right now, I mean, we don't have the results, we don't have the numbers yet, but as it stands right now, the board will be keeping with the policy to remain within the 2.1% COLA cap.
Thank you. Susan Pendiker, Recording Secretary, District 36, MPRA, and Kewpie 391, retiree. My question is about the dental. At our last quarterly meeting, we had a member inform us that she thought she had heard that if you had originally taken the basic dental plan 2 years ago or a year and a half, whenever it was we had to sign up, that there was going to be an opportunity to upgrade to the enhanced dental plan, and that there was going to be a window of, I think, this fall in November that you had to apply by. And I don't think I've received any information at all from Pacific Blue Cross as an individual. This was just what we were informed. And
okay. Monique, can I ask you to take that? Or Judy and Monique are debating here between who's going to take it.
Yeah.
Judy's going to go first.
So I'm going to let Monique take this question just because I don't want to get it wrong. I think I know what the answer is.
Neither do I, Judy. So there is a re-enrollment period, and for moving up, you are not able to, once you're in the enhanced plan, you cannot come down to the different plan. But I think that's actually an enrollment question as far as how to go about that through the pension corporation. And I'm not sure of the details of that, Judy, so I'm sorry, we'll have to...
So maybe that's a question we can take on notice as well.
Yeah.
And we'll post a answer on the website as well.
Right. Thank you for the question. I have this lady to the right here, or your left.
My name is Debra Nelson. I'm a retired municipal employee. I have a comment first off about the bridging, and please don't take away the bridging. That's kind of what makes you survive until you get your CPP. But my question is about the employer contributions for our benefits. And we got this glowing report about how much we've increased our the overall pension, and we're doing so well. Why can we not increase the employer contribution towards our benefits so that we can have dental covered? And that, I mean, we seem to be doing very well. Why is the benefit part of it so constrained?
Judy, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to a couple of things. One is, first of all, the number one priority is to guarantee or to ensure that the trustees are able to meet the basic pension promise and to pay pensions. Cost of living adjustments and group benefits are non-guaranteed benefits, and they're subject to funding constraints. So that's how the plan is structured. And each of those buckets are funded slightly differently. The other thing is that with the joint trust agreement, the board does not have authority to increase contributions to the plan. So talking about all the different moving pieces is something that we do in connection with the plan partners, but at the end of the day, the board is not in a position to increase employer contributions for group benefits.
Well, who would be? like, how would you address that if you wanted to increase, somebody wanted to increase that?
So the plan partners are the signatories to the joint trust agreement. On the member side, they're represented by the Municipal Employees Pension Committee. So as a member, that would probably be the organization for you to reach out to.
Okay, thank you for the question. Gentleman here.
Just a couple of points of information before I ask my question.
Sorry, just before you get going, can you just
Ken
give me your name?
Douglas, District 35, First VP. If we work part-time, 50%, and contribute 50%, our pension is then 50% of what a full-time pension is. Is that correct?
Well,
essentially.
Essentially. Okay. Now, with the other point of information I'd like to ask is, was the subsidy level across the board, or was it proportionate to the time that you worked?
Are you talking about the...
If you worked part-time, was your subsidy for your benefits proportionate to the time you contributed to the pension, or was it a level subsidy across the board?
It was proportional.
Your
Deb,
subsidy is based on pensionable service.
So the same subsidy was, it wasn't the same. If you were part-time, it was, if you worked full-time and got a full pension, you had a higher subsidy than if you worked part-time and got a part pension.
Well, not really. It's total pensionable service. So if you've worked part-time throughout your career, you would have more than 10 years of pensionable service. So you would get the maximum subsidy. So the subsidy is based on your total pensionable service, not the number of years that you participated. If you worked part-time for 5 years, you might only have 3 years of pensionable service, so your subsidy would be lower. So it's the total pensionable service that determines the level of subsidy for benefits.
Thank you. I don't need the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question.
I'm just thinking, Penny Oyama from Burnaby, I'm just thinking this is almost turning into kind of like a discussion, but there's a benefit to that. It seems to me
that's great.
If one of us were to corner one of you and have a private little discussion, how would we inform everybody about what the heck the discussion was about? So I guess this is sort of about a couple of things, but a bigger, so with respect to investments and ethical investing, then with respect to input of retirees into the whole plan, all these issues, et cetera, we're the reason that this plan exists. So it makes nothing but common sense that we should have some kind of a voice, some kind of input. So there should be absolutely no question about whether to ask us for input or not. It should be a done deal. So I'm just kind of wondering about advocacy and leadership and taking bulls by the horns and all that with issues like groups like ours, Pension Corporation and Retirees Association, should be advocating for ethical investments to be done. So in terms of investing in energy companies, the energy companies that we should be investing in are renewables, not fossil fuels, for one thing, just point blank. So why couldn't a change like that be made in investment portfolios, especially in light of the recent IPCC report that scares the doo-doo out of it, should scare the doo-doo out of everybody. We don't have 12 years to sit around and figure out how we're going to make it through the climate crisis. We need to do it yesterday. What is the board doing about actively advocating for using input that retirees have?
Okay, so I appreciate the question and I appreciate your concern. I just wanted to mention that Bonnie Pearson and Dawn Sutton, who I think are in the room today. Bonnie, are you here? And Dawn here? They are actually retired plan members and represent the retired plan members, and they are appointed by the Municipal Employees Pension Committee. So you most certainly can reach out to them and speak to them, and of course we're always welcome letters to our to the trustees, and so I don't think people realize that there are actually 2 retired members on the board, and then on top of that, the other appointing authorities, there is actually 5 or 6 retired members on the board.
Do we have a voice, though?
You do have a voice through Bonnie and Dawn. Thank you.
Hello, it's Carl Foltz, Kewpie Local 4879, Thompson Rivers University, also a member of the Kewpie BC Pension Committee. And my question is about what are your projections about future demographics? You have 2 retired people for every person working. You've got, you already said that there's going to be a correction in the stock market, and we're relying on 75% of the returns and 25% contribution. And at the same time, when you have contributing plan members with, there's a growth of precarious work and part-timers, so that reduces contributions as well. So you can really see the walls kind of closing in to guarantee those benefits. So what do the projections look like, and what are your contingency plans to deal with the changes in the demographics and precarious work and the stock market? That's a tough question. You guys do a tough job, and I'm so grateful for the pension. Myself, I like to see the gray power in the room. I wish we saw a lot of 30-somethings and 40-somethings. Well, they're the people working to support it. But so what do the projections look like? And with all those scary factors coming into play, and what's the contingency plan to deal with it?
Great. Thank you for the question. That's a great question, and it is something that's on everybody's mind. And that's part of the valuation process that we're going through, which will take effect at the end of this year. Will take a little bit. But I'm going to ask Richard Border, our actuary, to stand up and maybe answer a few of those tough questions.
So when we do the valuation, we effectively are projecting the income and outgo for every single person in the plan. So people who are already in the plan, we anticipating the aging process that you're seeing, and we're taking it into account when we establishing what our liability is, how much money we need, and when we calculate what contributions are required. So we've already are projecting that, and we can see the effect of it. We also do other modeling where we don't just look at this valuation, but we look at future valuations. We say, what might it look like 6 years from now, 9 years from now? And when you start doing that, that starts feeding into your investment policy. So you can start seeing that as you've got more pensioners and you've got less people that are paying, you need to think about your investment risk and whether you can afford to take on that amount of investment risk. So your investment policy starts changing as a consequence. So that modeling goes on all the time. And the valuations and the asset studies do anticipate the changes in the demographics.
Thank you, Richard. Bonnie, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, I just thought in light of your comments, I would identify myself. I'm Bonnie Pearson. I'm a retiree trustee appointed by the Municipal Employees Pension Committee and one of the members of the Board of Trustees. When we operate at the Board of Trustees, however, we're regularly reminded that we operate on the best interests and our fiduciary responsibility to all plan members. So certainly your comments and your concerns from the retiree group are regularly brought into the room. But at the end of the day, it is all of the plan members that are taken into consideration when decisions are made. I think, the whole investment thing, and I'm not going to belabor it, it's been spoken to and well explained, but it is complex, it is long-term, and so any changes that are made need to take into account that When you're dealing with $50 billion, that can move markets. So you need to be somewhat conscious of how you do that. And decisions are made on investments by our investment agents. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's, I think we all agree, climate change is one of the biggest issues facing us all, and we have to be alive to it, and how we're going to address it is critical. But I also would not want to stand in front of this body and if we did something that was precipitous and resulted in decisions that meant the money isn't there to pay the pensions. So it's something the investment committee in particular spends a lot of time on. So it's not treated frivolously. And it is something that the board is having increasingly lengthy conversations about as well.
Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate the comments. Yes, one question here.
Hi, I'm curious about something. Given that the increases in the COLA and the increases in the subsidies for our benefits comes from that same pot of money, how does the board determine which increase is most beneficial to the members?
Judy, do you want to take that?
The board, as part of its strategic planning process, regularly looks at what its long-term goals are. And its top three income security goals are paying the basic pension, second is COLA, and third is access to group benefits. So one of the policy decisions they made a number of years ago, which they regularly review and revisit, is that up to 0.8% of the employer contribution that goes into, would otherwise go into the IAA account to fund COLA can be used to pay subsidies for group benefits. But that's the limit, and that is in part because of the prioritization decision that was made earlier, that COLA is much more important to the long-term income stream for retirees. It's a very, very valuable benefit, and over a 10-year period makes a big difference to people's net pay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the question. Mary.
My name is Mary Polak, and I'm a retiree. My question is quite simple. In 2016, there was 0.7 of the employer's contribution to the inflation adjustment account used. In last year, it was only 0.3. Is there any hope for the retirees who are struggling, really struggling, of any subsidies coming back for a dental plan?
I would love to give you an answer of yes, but this is why we're doing the review. We're looking into it, and we are seeking information from ZLC. They're providing us with data. We are seeking input from the members. We're seeking input from active members, retired members. And I can't give you an answer to that question right now. I would love to if I could, but I can't. It's part of our review. So.
My name is Sheila Rosewell. I'm recently retired, but I'm standing at the mic again. It feels like old days when I was a member in a trade union convention. Anyway, I'm asking the question on behalf of all of the mostly women who are in fairly precarious jobs, low-income jobs, of you as board members, because I want to follow up on the sisters who spoke about accrual rates and a board discussion and staff review of accrual rates that would benefit all of those people who are not able to be here today because they're working one of probably 2 or 3 jobs. So I really do think that the accrual rate discussion and how it benefits low-income people not, but does benefit high-income members, yes, needs to take place. And I would like to know if if the board has asked Richard, or will that be part of a discussion in the evaluation towards the end of this year? Thank you.
So I wouldn't say that it's part of the valuation process per se, but it is a very complex issue, and if the board were to consider changes like what some of the other plans have done, that's a very significant undertaking and not one to do lightly. I certainly take your point, and I think you know, before any board were to make significant plan design changes like that, they would need to be very, very certain that they understood at a deep level the impact of making changes, not just on that population, but on all of the other populations in the plan. And Municipal is a very complex plan. There are a wide number of sectors, a wide number of patterns within the plan, and it takes time to do that analysis.
Thank you for the question. We have a question from this gentleman here.
Hi, Eric Jaworski again, Surrey Schools. I'm actually curious, how does our accrual rate stack up to other public pension plans across Canada? I mean, every province has one. We are at 1.3. What is it? I don't know, Ontario Public Service or whatever, right? So that would be the first question. But second, I'm also curious, our being counter who attends those meetings every year, what is the average life expectancy for both male and female member of the plan? I'm just wondering. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to start with the difficult question? Judy?
So a 1.32% integrated formula was fairly common across Canada for a number of years. That is not the formula that the college, public service, and teachers plans have now. They've changed. They've moved away from that formula as a result of recent plan design decisions. But I'm going to ask Richard to talk perhaps about the average life expectancy for municipal employee.
That's the
plan
easy
members.
one.
So I don't have the accurate number, but it's roughly probably about 87 for females, and it's slightly less than that for males. So our expectation is that females will live longer, and it's around about 87, 86.
Okay. Thank you for the questions. This woman in the red.
Hi, I'm Myrna, retired Kewpie member and MPRA Tri-Cities. With age comes this chronic pain. Cancer is prevalent, chronic pain, arthritis, everything. And now with medical marijuana coming in, will Blue Cross be covering that when it's a prescription? I think you're going to run into a lot of that because I know 6 people who take it for chronic pain, and they're able to go to a dispensary and buy it. And I wondered if Pacific Blue Cross has a policy. Not that anybody really has a policy in place for marijuana, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is a new thing that has come up, and the question is asked frequently. I think the best answer I can give you is that with our review that's going on, obviously that is going to be a discussion point as well. So we're not ignoring it. We know it's out there. You can't help but know it's out there right now. It's on the news every second. But yeah, it will be part of that discussion. Thank you for the question.
Hi, I'm Bruce Scott. I'm a union rep for West Vancouver and a plan member. I'd like to go back to the bridging topic. So there's been a lot of discussion over the years as to whether the bridging is going to survive or not, because there's some groups that benefit from the bridging, but also groups that won't be able to afford to use it. And I think the statistical information shows that the majority of members that are contributing to that benefit won't be able to afford to use it. So that's been part of the discussion that's been going on for years. I'm just wondering why it's taking so long to. I've been on a local pension committee for 8 years, and I know as soon as I got there, that discussion was already ongoing. So 8 years have gone by and there's been nothing said. And no matter where you stand on the question, I think we've been too long discussing it, and wondering if the panel can give us a commitment to when you're going to come back with an answer.
I'm going to ask Judy to address this. I would like to be able to say, well, we're coming back with an answer in a certain period of time, but I can't give you that answer. I'll tell you that right now. But I will ask Judy to talk about what's going on.
Yeah. So I like Hilary, I wish I could give you a definitive date and a time when we would have a direct answer to that question. What I can tell you is that part of the work that we're doing so far indicates that it's not quite as simple as that. So we might think that people with smaller pensions or low-income workers might not take advantage of early retirement, and that it's high-income workers and people with larger pensions that do. That's not quite what we're finding when we look at the municipal pension plan. So every pension plan is different. The circumstances are different, and we want to make sure we understand what's happening within municipal and what municipal members are using and taking advantage of.
Yeah, so I understand that. I've been in different unions before and different executives, and sometimes find that bodies are making decisions for members. You think you know what they want, and you don't always know what they want. And I wonder whether the layers of bodies that we're talking about that are running the pension, all the stakeholder groups and whatnot, and I understand there's a lot of complexity involved, but doesn't it just make sense just to go back to the member who's contributing to the plan and ask the question, do you want it? Mark, tick box A. If you don't want it, tick box B, and you've got your answer.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Oh, just to extend the question on pot. I'm a gardener, and our zone here, you're allowed four plants, by the way, under this new rule, and they grow very well in pots. Yeah, pots.
The information that you get when you come to the AGM, isn't it?
No, but you should take them in when there's a frost coming, and then continue on. Thanks a lot.
We have another question from Ed.
Not a question, it's more of a request. Excuse me, the MPRA produced a video to promote our association, and I believe that the Pension Corporation or the municipal plan is showing it at their seminars. And with indulgence of the chair and the panel, I brought the stick that has the 3-minute video on it, so if I could request that they be able to show it through their IT people over here.
I guess so. Maybe what I'll do, is there any other, before we show it, is there any other questions? Oh yeah, so Ed, if it's okay with you, I think I'll finish off the question, then I'll actually close the AGM, and then we can play it for anybody who's interested in staying and watching it. I think that probably would be the best. So I have one more question here from...
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Elaine Barron. I'm from Metro Vancouver Regional District and a representative of the 30 and 40-somethings in the pension plan. Yay! So, of course, retirement for me is hopefully 25, but more like 30 years away.
It'll come, don't worry.
Eventually,
sooner than you think.
and me personally, in the I guess situation, in the economic situation we're in now, when people in my generation are finding it difficult to get into the housing market, or even just to get by day to day, I'm very appreciative of the fact that I will have access to a pension plan when I do retire. But my question is, what are the expectations, and this might be an actuarial question, what are the expectations for contribution rates going forward? Because we are a shared risk plan, and then with the stats that the population of retirees has grown 65% since 2008, with another 40% of active members over 50 moving into the retirement phase in 5 to 10 years. because it's a shared risk and with a heavy influx of retirees, what's that going to look like maybe in the next 5, 10, 15 years for contribution rates? I don't mind making contributions because I know of the benefit at the end of it, but at the same time, trying to get by every day, trying to pay my mortgage and my expenses and all of that stuff. So what does that look like in the future? What kind of increases could we possibly be looking at?
Okay.
Thank you.
Richard, that does sound like an actuary question.
So when you're looking at contributions, there's two different pieces in the contribution calculation. The one is how much do you need to pay over a person's lifetime, working lifetime, so that when they retire, their pension is secure. And that's kind of the starting point. That piece of the pension or the contribution cost isn't going to change because of the fact that we've got an aging active population. The way that we do the calculation already accounts for that, and so it's a level amount. The piece that becomes the issue, and there is no real answer to it, is if your investments underperform, then your contribution rate is going to need to go up to compensate. If your investments do well, then you can do the opposite. And as you get more mature and you have more pensioners, that impact becomes bigger. So what we have is an expectation that the contribution becomes more difficult to manage. There's no direction to this. It depends on where the investments are. So in the long term, we have a view as to where those investments are. Your long-term contributions aren't going to go up, but in between, your contributions are potentially more volatile. And so the way that we deal with that is we look at the investment policy and we try and invest in a way that reduces that. So there isn't a long-term trend inherent in the system that we have where contributions are going to go up because you got aging.
The other thing that I want to mention too is that we've recently established a rate stabilization account, and we did that for that very reason, so that because there was contribution increases in 2006, 2009, and 2012. And so we were recognizing that there needed to be something done, so the rate stabilization account was created.
Thank you. Tony Nartini, retired Local 18 Vancouver Firefighters, MPRA member, and an average C student, so not the sharpest in the drawer here. So, my question is to Ms. Ducharme. It's not really a question. It's just, well, I guess it is a question. I was just wondering if, in the benefits review, if you've taken into consideration the money saved on the MSP premiums and looked at maybe setting up a separate benefits account using that money which is being saved from the retirees who are not having to pay that now, and the 0.8% of the employer's contributions, 95,000 retired members of the municipal pension plan. That's millions of dollars a month that could be going into a separate investable account that would look after benefits and probably improve benefits and be able, instead of subsidizing, pay for benefits. And I was just wondering if you've actually had any consideration or spoken about that in your meetings.
I'll answer part, and then I'm going to defer to Judy. There hasn't been, there's been very preliminary discussion about the MSP subsidy savings. Right now, that money is part of the basic pension, which is part of a guaranteed benefit. So we, as a board, could not take money from a guaranteed benefit and designate it to something that was not a guaranteed benefit. That would have to be a decision made jointly with the plan partners. There was historically investigation done about setting up a separate benefit account, and it was deemed not a viable option. That was done historically. It has not been reviewed recently, but I'm not sure, Judy, if you want to add anything on the work that was done many years ago on that.
I don't think there's much for me to add to that, actually.
To set up a separate benefits account, it led us into many other streams and administrative, an entirely different aspect within the plan, and so it was deemed not valuable.
I can see that if it was money that we were asking you to take out of the other accounts. But this is money that we have been paying, and which is now either coming back to us as the, for round figures, $27 a month that we got last time, and perhaps another $27 coming off in 2019. And that money is available before it goes into the general account, which seems to be pretty well funded as it is. And to take that money and put it into an investable account just seems like a natural thing to do. This is money that we would not be missing. In speaking to the unions at the last time that the benefits were chopped, they were worried that the active members were going to have to pay more. We're not asking for the active members to pay more. We're asking that the money that we have had coming off our checks, which we're not going to miss because it's already been coming off our check, be put into this account and have that go towards our benefit package.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
I think we answered the question the first time. I mean, if there was another question, I think Deb explained that we've looked into that in the past, and at that point it wasn't viable. And that's not to say that we're not, you know, possibly looking at some alternatives, but that's the answer that we have for you right now. Mary?
Yeah, Mary Polak. I would just like to say that I think this has been one of the best meetings that we've had by allowing us to come forward, ask our questions, and we've let you know the things that we're thinking, and we're asking you to be mindful of it, take it back, and discuss it so that we feel that we're part of. That's all we're asking. But I think this was one of the best meetings.
Great. I'm very, very pleased to hear that, and we thank you for that feedback and comment. It's absolutely vital to us to hear that. Do we have another question?
I'm another Mary, City of Burnaby. I've noticed since I retired last year that the municipal pension plan does two things differently from the Canada pension plan. Can't hear me. One has to do with the cost of living increase. Regardless of what time during the year you retired, Canada Pension Plan in the subsequent year gives you the full cost of living increase. If you contributed to the municipal pension plan and say you retired August 31st, 2017 and collected a pension for the last quarter only of the year, your cost of living increase for the subsequent year is 1/4 of the 2.1%. I wonder if you're considering changing that. The other thing I noticed has to do with the T4A design. T4A, like your T4, has a lot more detail than the T4A that the municipal pension plan issues. Canada Pension Plan, for each box, refers you to the line item on your income tax return, just like your old T4A when you were employed does. Your T4A doesn't. Not everybody uses a TurboTax program or an accountant to do their income tax returns. I would love to see the line item referred to, especially when it has to do with these benefits like the medical, the MSP subsidy, the enhanced medical, and the dental premium benefit.
I'm sure, and I'm looking at Aaron when I'm answering this question. He can correct me. I'm confident that the T4As that you get from the Pension Corporation meet legal requirements. I'm certain of that.
Well, they may.
But if there is something else that can be added onto the T4A, most certainly we can have a discussion with Aaron and get one of these other T4As and compare them and see what the difference is. And I mean, I can't promise anything because it could be a very costly change, but most certainly, Aaron? You're okay with that? Okay. Aaron says yes. Okay. And in terms of the COLA question, at this point in time, we are not, we don't have any plans to review the way the COLA is done. But as we have said throughout this whole meeting, our key thing is to meet our pension promises, and the first one is to pay pension, and the second one is for sustainable COLA, and the third one, of course, is to allow access to benefits. And so these things are constantly being reviewed. And
fair enough, Hilary.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much for the question. I appreciate it.
Terry Erskine, First Vice President of the MPRA. The MSP premiums and this reduction that the government has taken place didn't just happen. And
we will play this video now for anybody who's interested in staying to watch it. Thank you.
Just for the Green Party to get what we got today. We didn't put all our eggs in one basket. And I just want the board to be aware that there's more to come, and we're not going to stop. And as an organization,
am I surprised?
No, I know, but you haven't been chair for long. That's why I'm saying this. So what I'd like to say is that these kind of saving initiatives that are going to come from organizations like ours, 2 members, there's going to be other things. And so Brother Narratini's point is that you've seen what's come so far, and there's going to be more to come. And we'd like the board to take into consideration that maybe an account to put that money into there to preserve the benefits that we had in the past would be a serious consideration. And in closing, I'd like to say this. The MPRA, I think, now has come of age. We've opened a lot of doors with the board, and I'd like to say that the committee that I'm on, meeting with the chair and vice chair and others, have been very receptive. When we reach out to stakeholder groups, we'd like to be considered one of those primary stakeholder groups. We'd like you to communicate with our organization so that we can go to our grassroots people and find out what the people really think and give some meaningful input back to you so you can make great decisions on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just so you know, we are actually meeting with the executive next Wednesday, one of our semi-annual meetings. I don't see any more questions. Is there anybody else who wants to ask a question before I close this off? Okay. Is this working? Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for asking the questions, and I do hope that this way of doing things has provided you with a good way of communicating with us, and we certainly appreciate all your comments. So this concludes the 2018 Annual General Meeting. We invite you to share any additional thoughts that you have about today's meeting by filling out the yellow AGM comment card and putting it in one of the boxes in the back. And don't forget that if you do have a personal pension question, fill out the white form, but please make sure that you make your contact information clear and legible so that we are able to contact you. And also, before I'm closing, I want to thank the Secretariat and many of the Pension Corporation staff for making this AGM possible. There are hours of work that actually go into preparing this and making sure everything runs very smoothly. So I do want to thank them, as well as I want to thank you, the audience, and all of our service providers here to be available to answer the questions. So again, thank you for coming, and please have a very safe journey home or wherever you're going to next. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.